In previous episodes of the off-season, we've discussed what we plant and when we plant our food plots here on our property. On this episode, we will be joining Kip Adams and Dr. Craig Harper as they take a deep dive into planting methods and talk about which ones are best for your land.
There is tremendous soil health benefits if we can always keep something on the ground, something growing, so that we're not turning everything over to just dirt. And as you can see, we're not disturbing everything here.
Welcome back to yet another episode of the off-season. On today's show, we will once again be joining Kip Adams from the National Deer Association, as well as Dr. Craig Harper from the University of Tennessee. These guys seem to have an endless pit of knowledge when it comes to land management, and today they are discussing the two basic methods of planting food plots. Now, in the first season, Dad and I discussed our methods and our thought process we have when we plant our plots here on our home farm in Pennsylvania. Today, Kip and Craig will dive deeper into the two most common methods of putting seed in the ground.
Most people who are planting food plots plant with conventional means, meaning we're going to do something to work the soil up, get it ready to be able to plant, and then go that way. Whether that's a disc, whether that's a rototiller, different ways to do it, but this is the main way that most people will work. Now, are there benefits if we don't have to work the soil and if we can do something that's no-till? The answer is yes, there are. I grew up on a farm and I vividly remember as a child the steps to planting any of the fields that we did, which involved plowing, picking rocks, then disking to smooth all that out, often picking rocks again. Then in some cases we would run a drag over it to make sure everything was good and level and smooth. Then if it was something that was a very small seed, we would cultipack a plot. And a cultipacker is essentially what you're seeing there underneath that brilliant cedar. It's very similar to a roller that's compressing the soil, so it's getting it so that it's firm enough to be able to plant small seeds. Then we would go through and plant. Then we would go and cultipack again, so we got good seed to soil contact. So those were the main steps. So think about that: plow, disc, maybe drag, cultipack, plant, cultipack. So we had 5 to 6 steps in all those fields. So obviously a lot of time, a lot of resources and labor relative to diesel and all of that. And every time that we work that soil, we know we have the potential to lose organic matter, and as we're trying to build soil and have the soil become healthier over time. Every time that we're working opposite relative to building organic matter and building that soil. Now, does it work? It absolutely works. And as Craig said, if you do that and grow a really good food plot, then heck yes, it's a lot better than it was before you did that. So we will show you how we're going to do that. Now, if we have the ability to use a no-till drill, whether you purchase one, whether you rent one or share one, there are definite benefits to that. That is a very expensive piece of equipment. Don't let that deter you from understanding what is going on with that or the ability to use that. We, being my father and I, rented one from our county conservation office for years before we ended up buying one. The vast majority of counties throughout the country either have the Soil Conservation Service or your local NRCS office have no-till drills that are available for folks to use. And you often pay on a per acre basis, the number of acres that you have planted. So it's very doable for almost everybody who's managing land. You don't always have the convenience of having it exactly when you want, but you can get on their list, they deliver it to you, or you pick it up. So those are available. So we want you, to understand benefits of using a no-till drill or that system, and then also understand, yes, this is available to you. So with a no-till, one of the things that are nice about it is, in many cases, you can go in and spray the plot and then plant it. That's it, 2 steps. So with what is here right now, we could we could spray this with an herbicide to kill the existing vegetation and drill right into this, and we're gonna drill here in a little bit. Or we could actually drill right into this first and then spray after. So, but 2 steps instead of all of those like we said with conventional. So there are definite benefits just from a time perspective and a fuel perspective being able to do that. If we're planting something that's very small seed, clover, brassicas, do we want our seed bed to be nice and fluffy for that to go in? Or nice and, yeah, because any of those small seeds or any seed that you can, kind of get under your fingernail, those can only be covered by a very small amount of soil. If you plant them deeper than that, they don't have the energy to germinate, so your germination rate will be greatly reduced. So anything that's very small seeded, we want to be covered just with a little bit of soil. So we need that soil to be pretty compacted before we go ahead and plant that. How about larger seeds? Oats, soybeans, corn. Do we want that covered by just a little bit of soil? That needs to be much deeper, correct? So how do we get that deeper in the system where we're disking? In many cases, we're going to work that soil such that we're able to get seed on in, go ahead and broadcast those larger seeds on top of that. Then how do we get it deeper? We can disc it again. We will lightly disc it again to work that down into the soil. So, and let's show you that. So, all right, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna have Denny fire this up, and we are gonna go ahead and disc a strip here. And so if this is your food plot and it's time to start planting, we're gonna have him disc here, and then you tell me, we'll say we're gonna plant some clover. And I'm gonna let you tell me, is this ready to plant or not? So Denny, can we get you to fire this up? The one pass with a disc, depending on soil conditions, if it's really, really dry and hard, might not even get as much as it did. Right. If there's a little more soil moisture, it might be a little more than this.
And if you go into growing vegetation, you are fighting all of that root system and trying to get that disturbed, and especially if it's perennial grasses, those root systems are not killed. So you can go into an area that is dominated by tall fescue or Bermuda grass, orchard grass, timothy, etc. Work it up just like you see here, because you're working it up to, yay depth, normally 4 to 6 inches, something like that. And you can have a fine seed bed on top and sow your clovers or chicory or what have you, have a great crop. But then by the following growing season, all of a sudden, there's grass coming in everywhere. That's because you didn't kill the root systems ahead of time, and they're expressing themselves coming back out. So you're gonna have big time grass problems in that plot, because do grass selective herbicides get rid of the perennial grasses? No. They will control them for the time being, but they don't do a good job of getting rid of them. And so that's why a glyphosate application prior to working up your seed bed is very, very important.
Okay, so we say Denny's out here and he's getting ready to plant this, and he has continued to disc until we get to something like this. Denny, how many passes did it take to get here? About 8 passes, and that's a pretty heavy disc that he has there. So about 8 passes, we get to this. Is this ready to plant now? Is the soil worked enough so we could plant clover or oats? Do we need to? We're gonna smooth it out. Let's say this. We're going to look at what's going on here. A good rule of thumb for anything that's small seeded is if when you walk into this, you sink down more than the heel of your boot, that is way too soft and fluffy to plant anything that's small seeded. So if we're gonna plant clover here, could we plant in this right now? What's happening is it is too fluffy such that if we plant, we're not gonna get that good seed to soil contact and good germination rates. So how can we correct this being, I will agree that yes, it is disked sufficiently now for a seed bed, but what can we do now? We can cultipack it. The cultipacker are those roller looking things in the bottom of that brilliant cedar. You can buy, a cultipacker that's not on the cedar. They just have a good example of that. That's also a cedar, but we'll show you here, we can run that over this. That will compact the soil enough to allow anything that's small seeds to be broadcast over the top of it. And then once we broadcast on the top, what do we do then? Do we walk away? we're going to cultipack again because that gives us that good seed to soil contact. That's exactly what we want. So the first pass with it, we'll get this ready to accept the seed. Then we broadcast it with this over the shoulder, and then we don't want to walk, we want to cultipack it again so that we get that really good seed to soil contact. And Craig has lots of data he could show you on germination rates for plots that are cultipacked versus not cultipacked. So definitely cultipack so that you get good seed to soil contact. All right, no-till wise, now you saw all the passes that we had here. From a no-till, 2 passes, right? We'll spray and we'll drill, and we can drill. You could drill into this if you wanted. And this is what they used to do with conventional grain drills. They would work the ground and then use the drill to go ahead and plant, because we're planting in rows and you get very precise planting, for each of those rows that it plants. That particular drill is a 10-foot drill, so we're planting 10 feet at a time. Each row of that are separated by 7.5 inches. So we're planting every 7.5 inches across. So the difference between a no-till drill and a conventional grain drill is conventional grain drills, you have to work the soil and then you would plant in this. With a no-till drill, you don't have to work the soil. We can plant right in that right there without having to disc, cultipack, and all that, because that is a one-stop shop for all of that. With that, what that will do is it will slice an opening where we want to plant. There are 2 openers behind it that will open that slice up just a little bit. The seed will drop right in where we have it sliced, and then there's press wheels on the back that act as the cultipacker. So we are doing all of this with one. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring that up, I'm gonna drill a line through here, and I'll show you that, and then we're actually gonna get our hands on that and look at these different parts and understand then how that is used in the different adjustments on it to get that seed at the exact depth that we want, whether it's very shallow or a little bit deeper. All right, come on over here. So with this, obviously, that's one pass rather than all of those that we did there. We haven't disturbed everything else that's out here. There is tremendous soil health benefits if we can always keep something on the ground, something growing, so that we're not turning everything over to just dirt. And as you can see, we're not disturbing everything here. We would then either spray this with an herbicide right before we drilled or right after we drilled to kill this, but we're still not tearing all that up. So there's definite benefits to that. When you're drilling, you have to drill at a pretty slow speed. In many cases, they say 4 miles an hour at most. The reason is, as this is going, if you go faster and that thing starts to bounce at all, you can now understand that as that thing comes up, suddenly the seeds are not going to be planted at exactly the same art if this thing is bouncing.
2.5 miles.
Yep. So you want to be as consistent, as smooth as it can be. That will ensure a higher percentage of that seed is at the exact depth that you want it, and then increase germination.
Kip and Dr. Harper are 2 extremely knowledgeable people when it comes to just about everything from managing your property for wildlife, and they did a great job explaining the 2 basic methods of planting food plots. This episode, I believe, was great for both beginners who want to start planting food plots, but also for those that have been doing it for 20 years. If this type of video is something that you enjoyed, then I strongly encourage you to watch our other 2 episodes in this NDA series, and also check out the habitat modules and courses they hold each year. As always, thank you for watching another episode of The Off Season.